Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the Pork Queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. I'm Justin Brady. This is the Iowa Podcast. For those that don't remember, a few months ago, we had Kevin Foley on the show. He's the executive director of the Des Moines International Airport, and he's retiring, sadly. He's done a lot of good for the Des Moines Airport, doesn't toot his own horn at all, so we're going to toot it for him today. But of course, he joins us. We also have a mystery guest, who is Brian Mulcahy, and you will be passing the torch, filling the shoes. I don't know what terminology we use here at the airport, but I'm guessing there's probably some military acronym that has something to do with like taking over a position, right?
Yeah. Change command.
Change of command. I knew there was something. I appreciate both of you doing this. We're of course in the airport. So a few short years from now, this will be historical footage, right?
Well, this particular spot will still be used, but yes, eventually this will be no longer here.
So we're at the junction of like A and C. That's behind us right now, where everyone gets their water and their snacks before they go on a trip. At least that's what we do. What is going to be in this spot? Is this going to be parking? Is this going to be just a renovated terminal? What's it going to look like?
Eventually it'll be aircraft parking.
Okay.
The new terminal actually goes right through the C concourse. And all of this becomes ramp area for aircraft parking.
Sure. Wow. Okay. So I want to start off with, the passing the torch thing. This is for you, Kevin. How many aircraft are you actually certified on? I think a lot of people don't understand. You're a pilot.
I am.
And you used to do training.
I did at CFI.
Yeah. Do you still do that, by the way?
My license is current. I'm not current, but my instructor's certificate is current. And so I'm multi-engine certified, but you get into jets, you have to have type ratings, and I do not have a type rating.
Sure.
So it has to be lighter than 12,500 pounds, basically, for me to fly it.
So are you concerned at all about handing off airport operations to a military helicopter pilot?
I am not. The knowledge of being a pilot helps on the management side. It does help. I mean, I know on the parts of the ILS, which he shoots the ILS just like anybody else does, and those types of things, it does help on the management side. Other than that, at least here in Des Moines, I haven't touched a yoke in the exercise of my duties as the executive director.
So, Brian, a lot of people don't know who you are, except for in here. I've had Kevin on, I think, the show twice now, and previously at WHO, I had you on that show as well. What do you want people, I'm not going to ask a whole drawn-out background, but obviously appreciate your service. What do people need to know about you as you take over the reins here at the Des Moines International Airport? And then feel free to interject in case he's holding stuff back.
Well, I've been here since 2011, so I came here as the director of finance, and was the director of finance up until about 2 years ago, maybe a little more, when I became the assistant executive director. So I've been around for the whole terminal planning process, and I understand all the financing that's gone into the new terminal and the design and everything. So I think I'm well prepared to take over. Kevin's mentored me well, I think, and I have the benefit of having been here to know what's going on currently and what's coming down the road.
Yeah. Anything to add to that?
There is. So when we hired Brian, as I tell people, if I've got any talent, it's surrounded myself with people that are smarter or more talented than I am. Brian, while he didn't have specific experience in airport management, he had a background in aviation, albeit military, but he also had a background in insurance and some other areas that I wasn't as strong in, certainly as he was. And so that was a large part of bringing him on. He's a quick study. He very quickly, because he had to, because of the dollars flowing through, accounting touches almost every part of the management aspect of the airport. And so he had to learn very, very quickly. And I know he put in a lot of hours on the weekends to pick up the knowledge that was necessary to actually even do the job as finance director. But then more importantly, to step into the assistant executive director's position and on into the director's position.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a walk through memory lane, but before I do that, are there any things that are on the horizon that you're really excited of? Because you're taking over in April, I think, when you retire. It'll be same day he retires, you take over. Are there anything you're really excited about coming the next couple of years? Well,
obviously the completing the terminal is a huge one. Actually, this summer, getting the parking garage finished off and that whole project wrapped up will be big. But yeah, eventually getting into the new terminal and just hopefully we keep that on track for the end of 2026, and then really seeing where we're at in terms of eventually building out the whole new terminal, which would take down this area of the building. But we'll be happy just getting the first 7 or 8 gates open and getting everything functioning. And that'll really consume our time here for the next 18 months.
How many more, well, I guess I should ask, for those that don't know, I don't even know the answer to this. How many gates do we currently have?
We have 13 operating right now.
13? We only have 13 gates? Oh, operating right now. Before they shut down that whole parking lot for the Delta wing, which would be C, right, behind us, how many did we have total?
Well, we only actually had 12 gates then, but we could park multiple aircraft on a gate.
Unbelievable.
Now all of our gates are one-to-one, one aircraft to one gate. Before we could park around 20 aircraft around the terminal. With smaller regional jets, that's easier, obviously.
That's a good point.
We're mostly have narrow bodies coming in here now, so sure. 737s or Airbus aircraft. So that's why we had to build the remote parking spots that we did last year. They're going to get a lot of use this summer.
I imagine with like maybe there are exceptions for certain uses, but I imagine 737s, at least for the near future, are probably the biggest aircraft we're going to get in here on a frequent basis.
Yeah. The Airbus 320s. We do have some 321s coming in occasionally. They are detrimental to the runway pavement.
321s?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because of the way the landing gear is situated. It's just a lot of down pressure when they touch down. But that's minimally 180 passengers on up to, I think they hold up to 220 on the 321. So a lot larger airplanes, and consequently you can only put one airplane per gate.
So the rumor is that Navy pilots land a lot harder than like Army pilots. And so is that true?
Well, I'd probably land hard if I was landing on a moving ship. I'd definitely want to plant it.
We were taking, I don't remember where it was. We were taking one flight, and it was Army and Navy in the cockpit.
Oh, okay.
And it was and they're like, you tell us who landed it when we arrived. They're a really great pilot, co-pilot, and it was a pretty rough landing. Not bad rough, just a harder hit. So I just came up there. I was like, that was pretty rough. It was definitely a Navy pilot. And the one guy smacked the other guy. He's like, dude, and they just started laughing. So I wonder if that is an actual myth or if it's actually true, because they have, like you said, that tiny space they got to land on. So maybe we just say, if you're driving an A321, no Navy pilots, only Army National Guard pilots only. So looking backward, there are some notable, this was like, obviously, both of you, I think 9/11 was way before you guys were both here, right? That was before your tenure. But the big disruption, I think you were here too, correct me if I'm wrong, was the COVID-related shutdowns. You were here too.
Yep.
How did that completely, I mean, this is what it looks like all the time here, activity at Des Moines. And I remember when I was a kid, it was not like this. It was dead all the time. And so as you have come here, you've opened up a lot of gates, you've opened up a lot of activity. But during COVID, I want to go back to that because that was a major disruption. What was that like, going through that period? And that can be anybody.
It was rough. no cars. Parking lots were empty. The automobile parking lots were empty, and that was eerie just coming onto the airport. I think Brian and I both came in every day. Nobody on the terminals. We had airplanes coming in and going out with maybe 2 or 3 passengers on board at the most. We did still have aircraft activity. For the first part, it eventually was slowing down. But probably one of the roughest days for me was we had split our staff and said half of you are going to home for a week, the other half are going to work, and we're going to rotate. And when you're at home, they stayed on the payroll, but when you're at home, your one job is to stay home, stay healthy, so that you can come back in so that we can continue this rotation. But I went back to my office to calculate estimate at least how long we could keep everybody on payroll. And that was a rough day.
Yeah, that was, I remember landing in Minneapolis. I had to go to a client meeting, and it's from here. I flew out of here during COVID, like height of the pandemic. And I remember landing in Minneapolis. I don't remember what terminal it was. It was a Delta flight. And I remember we got off the airplane and the automatic lights near our end of the terminal clicked on. And that was like, I was like, no one has been here in an hour. It was eerie, like there was nothing open. Brian,
yeah, hopefully we never see that again.
Yeah, but like, did that change? I'll ask this to Brian, give him the hard questions. Sure. You can just give all the hard questions to him. Did that change? Were there any notes that we took? And it's not a leading question. I actually don't know the answer to this, but did this change operations? Did we say, hey, we could be doing these things better? Or, oh my gosh, we didn't foresee this as a possibility. In the future, we will?
I'm trying to think of anything that really changed significantly. I mean, it brought a lot more awareness to just cleanliness and how people operate, and how I think it's changed us all in terms of personal space. Maybe that's starting to fade now, but definitely for at least a year or two after COVID, people were less willing to sit side by side, even though they're going to get on a plane and sit next to each other. In the hold rooms, there's always a chair between people, or people would just kind of stand in the hallways maybe to keep their personal space. Maybe some of that's fading now, but I think I would say maybe cleanliness is one thing that's kind of changed in my mind. Just thinking through how we keep the building cleaner, because that was just such a focus during COVID. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully we never experience that again. But if something does happen, in the past, our dips, whether it's a recession or something else that happens, the dips have always been followed by a pretty quick recovery in airplane travel, and hopefully that'll be the case if we do encounter any more hiccups along the road here.
Because COVID was quite a ways back now, but I remember there were a lot of predictions, and by a lot of very influential, smart people, saying that this is the end of business travel. Like, we're going to do Zoom, we're going to do all these things, we're going to realize we don't need to do business travel anymore. They were all pretty epically wrong, right?
Yeah, and Kevin said this a lot during COVID, that, that only lasts for so long, because pretty soon somebody starts to travel again and they start to win the business because they've got the relationships, and that's really what the business travel is all about, mostly, is the relationships with your customers. So, no one's willing to cede that to someone else. Everybody's got to get out there and try to develop those relationships. So that's probably why business travel is always going to be fairly strong or stay around.
So just read, the projections were that business travel wouldn't be back until 2024, and those were very, very accurate. Really saw the business travel coming back in 24. But just last week read an article again where 45% of businesses were anticipating increasing business travel in 2025 because of that need for face-to-face. But I'll age myself a little bit. 35 years ago, or when I was flying, and I was flying for a corporation, Video conferencing was just coming on, and corporate pilots, you fly your people to the meeting, and then you all gather in the fixed base operation in the waiting room, and it was video conferencing was gonna put us all out of a job. And in fact, the opposite occurred, because it actually increases the speed, the rapidity at which we do business today. And it increased the need for travel, be it corporate or commercial. It actually increased the need for travel. So hopefully the opposite occurs again this time, where Zoom and Teams and those things just speeds up the amount of time or the time that it takes to do business, and then increases the need for travel.
That's fascinating. It is funny how, like, we have SpaceX self-landing rockets, and we have all this incredible aeronautic technology, but we still can't figure out how to not do a Zoom meeting. We still can't do it. Like, people are on mute, or they can't connect, or they have issues, or their webcam doesn't work, or their microphone doesn't work. It seems like we didn't really figure that out, actually. So I know that personally, I've noticed that meeting people over Zoom is just, there's so much missing. It's so awful. And it's actually, the COVID-related shutdowns has actually increased my amount of air travel dramatically, because I've realized how important it is to get face-to-face to people. And like you said, that's how you do close a deal. You shake someone's hand, you look them in the eye, and over the camera doesn't really count. There's something about it.
Yeah, it is. There's no replacement. I can't buy you a drink, I can't buy you dinner, I can't buy you lunch over Zoom.
Right.
And those things make a difference.
Brian, as you look at the next, how long are you going to be here? 20, 30 years maybe? And probably not. What technology is going to shape the future of aviation right here in Des Moines?
Well, we're looking at a few new things for the new terminal. The check-in process, we're looking at a self-bag drop.
Okay.
You're starting to see that at other airports now. Hopefully that will help speed the check-in process for people who just want to drop a bag. They don't need to talk to the ticket counter. Folks at the ticket counter, they just need to drop off a bag they've already paid for on their app. That's one thing. Outside the terminal, I'm a little concerned about autonomous vehicles at some point, because obviously we rely a lot on parking revenue here at the airport. I know Kevin believes that it's a ways down the road. I think it's closer maybe than some people, but that could really disrupt our business model pretty significantly, because about a third of our revenue is parking. So there's a number of things that are happening, I would say, within aviation, but not necessarily specific to aviation, that could come in the future.
I will say, and Sarah's behind the camera here watching and playing the role of security. I have been traveling a little bit. I'll admit something here, and we're going to actually get into this about connections and regional carriers and bigger carriers, the bigger planes. You mentioned the 737s. I may have gone to Minneapolis and Omaha to catch some flights in the last couple months, I'm sorry to say. There's a reason for that, which we'll get into, is connecting flights are kind of not really reliable these days. But I will say, in Minneapolis, we paid for parking there. It was actually really expensive. It was like $450 or $500 or something for a week. So if you think you don't like paying for parking in Des Moines International Airport lot, you're insane, because these are incredible deals. But I was like really excited to pay it. Well, not super excited, but they all have these EV chargers in there. And so my car was shielded from the elements and it was charging. So I'm like, it's not that bad. So if you just put EV stuff in there, I think everything will be good. But I wanted to talk about the connections and regionals, because we used to get only regionals. And I'll let you maybe explain the difference between like a mainline Delta, American, or United plane, and then a regional carrier, because they're different but kind of the same. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I mean, the regional jets primarily are the legacy airlines. So they're just trying to get, frequency over the number of seats. I mean, if we had all large aircraft on Delta, we'd have fewer flights to Atlanta or fewer flights to Minneapolis, because Des Moines is only going to fill so many seats a day.
Right.
So it's kind of a balance, for us. The frequency to some of these hubs is nice, but people also like the bigger planes. You're kind of your non-legacy airlines, so your Allegiant and Southwest, so to speak. They're flying mainline aircraft only. Allegiant specifically is flying all direct flights, so nonstop flights. So people really like that. They know if their bag gets on the plane, it's going to get to the destination with them. And they know they don't have to worry about the connecting, getting stuck in a connecting airport, like was happening a fair amount during COVID. Mm-hmm. So coming out of COVID, I think the direct flights are really popular. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that Allegiant has done so well in Des Moines is just because of the direct flights.
They're all direct.
They're all direct, and just people can really kind of count on making sure they get to their destination if they get out of Des Moines.
Right. Yeah, because that is a concern. I know for me and my wife, we travel a lot. And that is one of the things is when you're on a regional carrier, I did a little research into this, but I feel like the regional carrier, the smaller planes are a little deprioritized over the main, I don't know what they call them, like American Eagle, and then there's United Express, and what's Delta call theirs? I forget Endeavor Air, yeah, and those are they're not the main carriers. They're smaller carriers that have deals with the mainline carriers. I feel like they get deprioritized. Sometimes we miss some connections. So as the airport expands and we get more of the bigger planes in here, do we decrease the rate of some of those missed connections?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And to Brian's point, everybody, if you think about how people travel, first and foremost, they look at ticket price and then they look at convenience. Is there a connection? What time do I have to get up in the morning to catch this flight and those types of things? And so point-to-point flights can be on a regional jet. If you look at our LaGuardia destination, that's on a regional jet.
Oh, the American one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And Delta. So that's a fairly long flight, but just simply because of load factor, because of the number of passengers that are actually flying on a daily basis, they do it with a regional jet. So I wouldn't blame regional jets as being always connecting type flights. They are frequently, but as we grow and we increase our point-to-point, we are up to, or we were up to 31 destinations out of Des Moines. All of those point-to-point direct flights, nonstop flights. We just lost Los Angeles. Not because of Des Moines, but because of the cost to do business in Los Angeles. Allegiant canceled that flight and in fact closed that they're just not going into that airport anymore.
Was that airport fees, Scott?
Yeah.
Oh, for those that don't know, the carriers, all the planes that land here have to pay an airport fee to land here to the airport. That's one of the ways you make money.
Right.
And so you're saying that LAX was getting exorbitant and Allegiant couldn't afford it anymore.
Right. Or didn't want to. Whether they could afford it or not, they didn't want to. So the new terminal hopefully will allow, you mentioned Sarah. Sarah's the air service development manager, and she does the connections with the airlines and tries to convince them to increase either the number of routes that we have or the city pairs, or possibly just bring us in more airplanes or larger airplanes on an existing route that we have. And the new terminal, or I should say without the new terminal, that was going to be impossible because we were running out of places to park airplanes.
Right. And you were going to say something there too before I move on, I thought.
Well, I lost it if I was.
So earlier I was leading up to this and I don't think I came around. How many total gates will we have then at the new one?
Well, it's going to be a phase process here. When we open the new terminal day one, we'll be adding, it's 6 gates out of the chute. So 6 there, and we'll still have 13 here operating at that point. Take that back. We might have 12 in this concourse and then 6 in the new, so that'd be up to 18. And then our intent is to add a few more gates to the east, out towards Fleur, over the next couple of years, because some of that is tied to grant funding that's tied to later years, and we have to get the aircraft apron done.
Sure.
on those grants. So it'll be a kind of a process here for the couple of years after we open the terminal. But we should be able to get, easily we'll be getting into the 20. Eventually we'll have 11 gates on the new terminal, and still probably up to 12 could operate here. I don't know that we'll need that many. We may mothball some gates on the C concourse if we don't have demand to use those. So we'll be able to stay up with demand, and hopefully not being the case where we're at now, where we're kind of constrained on the air side.
So the terminal is 100% done,
Yeah.
and all of the old is torn down. There will be a total of 22 gates on the new terminal. But that third phase, so Brian's talking about the first and second phase, where we'll end up with the 11 gates in those two phases. That third phase depends on market growth and funding.
Sure.
And that may be a while before we see that third phase completed.
What's the relationship, and this would probably be a question for you, like what was it and what is it going to be going forward between like airports and airlines? Is that a strained relationship, or is it a really, really good one? What does that look like?
I think we're in a good place right now with the airlines, because we've been very upfront with them throughout the whole planning process as to what the project entails, what it's going to cost. We talked about the fees that the airlines pay. There's a metric that all airports have, which is a cost per enplanement. So that's the cost that the airline bears to enplane one passenger. And so, the airlines want to see that as low as possible, obviously. But we set a limit when we were doing our planning, and we said we don't want to go over this because we want to remain as competitive as possible with other airports. And I think the airlines have appreciated the fact that we kind of set that limit, and we've done a pretty good job of sticking to that. So I feel good about where we're at with the airlines. You never know what's going to happen with their business models and other factors outside of what we can control, but I think we've done a good job of controlling what we can control to try to keep that relationship as positive as possible.
Do we have new carriers or new routes coming in the next couple of years at the new airport?
That's Sarah's job.
Yeah.
But
we're go get them.
I think we're in good shape to see some new stuff. Obviously, we can't handle it right now.
Right.
Most of them want to be here overnight if they're coming into Des Moines, and that's obviously when we're constrained.
Because we're kind of an endpoint.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, but we get the new terminal open, then it makes the conversation a lot more appealing, I think, to the airlines to come into Des Moines.
So this year, we've got 3 new routes launching.
Really? While we're doing the airport, you're going to have 3 routes.
Absolutely. So, and it is pushing operations to figure out where to park these airplanes. And in fact, to Brian's point, because we have a good relationship with the airlines, one of the routes, Allegiant wanted to have another aircraft overnight, which is our busiest time parking airplanes here. Talked to them, and they said, we'll keep the route. We'll bring that plane in from another station. In other words, they'll load at a different station, come in, drop passengers, pick up, and then fly to that route. So they helped us out a little bit there on the operational side. But we've got Boston on Allegiant. American is bringing Philly back.
Oh, wow.
Which we had. They left Philly out of Des Moines in 2017. So had a break here. They're bringing Philly back, I think twice a day to Philly, and Jacksonville, Florida, coming back on Allegiant. So that's 3 new routes this year alone. And I do think there's a real possibility. I'll say it because he's not going to. I think there's a real possibility that we will see new airlines, and there's not a lot of them left. But I think we will see new airlines in Des Moines within the next 3 to 4 years.
Who would that be?
We will have new airlines in Des Moines.
I tried. You can see how I tried. Right, you can see how I tried. Last question before I let you go. I know you're both very, very busy, and right now there's no one leading at the helm. Just kidding. what is this going to look like? What are you going to, this would be for you, I guess. What should Iowans be prepared for in the next couple years? How is this going to transform? Can you walk them through what that experience is going to be as you're leading the ship?
Well, I think the main thing is Des Moines has always been an easy airport to get in and out of, and that's kind of the focus of our employees, is how we retain that. You know, we want to keep it easy. You know, safety and security are the key considerations in an airport. 1 and 2, you know, always for everything. But then beyond that, how do we make it easy for the passengers, and improvements, whether it's air service or just like I talked about, the self bag drop, things like that can make the process more efficient. You know, we want to try to do everything like that we can, and that's kind of where we'll focus, and just continue to hopefully make sure that people can count on, you know, when they come here, they're going to get on an aircraft and they're going to get out of here safely, and you know, if everything within our control, we will control. Weather obviously is not within our control, but you know, hopefully that's the only type of thing that stops a flight, you know, is when it's uncontrollable circumstances.
But I will say, on a previous episode, you were mentioning how you're moving the de-icing pads to the planes a little bit to cut down on some of that time. So when you guys pull back and there's a little bit of ice on the wings, they have to do the de-icing process. They no longer going to have to taxi to one side and come back. That's going to be eventually it's going to be at the gates or something.
We're building the de-ice pad this summer, so
yeah,
it'll be close to the terminal.
That's the best time to build them, I hear, is in the summer. Yeah. Kevin Foley and Brian Mulcahy, thank you so much. Of course, best of luck to you, Brian. You have enormous, I'm sure you know this, but you have enormous shoes to fill. Like I said, me and my wife fly out of here constantly, and the operation is always 100%. The only reason we went to those other cities is because sometimes the airlines aren't really operating at the speed at which Des Moines would like them to. Actually, well, I was going to say, I know what he's going to do next after he retires, which is he's going to go to Atlanta, and he's going to save the Atlanta airport, because that place is a disaster. You don't have to comment on it, but my word, Atlanta, can you get him? And he can probably save things about 2 weeks. You could probably turn that place around. Brian, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the Iowa podcast. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa podcast.